In a quiet zoo enclosure, an elephant named Happy walks up to a giant mirror. On her forehead, just above her eye, is a white painted cross she has never seen and cannot feel. She studies her reflection for a moment. Then she lifts her trunk, reaches up, and touches the mark on her own head. Not the mirror, her head. In that single gesture, Happy did something almost no other creature on Earth can do. She looked at a reflection and understood a staggering idea. That is not another elephant. That is me. You do it 100 times a day without a flicker of thought. You pass a window, a mirror, a dark phone screen, and you instantly know the face looking back is your own. But that simple recognition is one of the rarest abilities in the entire animal kingdom. Almost every other living thing on the planet looks into a mirror and sees a total stranger. So why is knowing your own reflection so astonishingly rare? And what does it really tell us about which animals are aware that they exist? The answer will take us to a tiny, unexpected creature that shattered everything scientists thought they knew, and by the end, you may not be sure the test means what we always believed. To understand this, we have to go back to 1970 and a psychologist named Gordon Gallup. Gallup wanted a way to ask an animal a question it could never answer in words. Do you know that you are you? So he designed something now called the mirror mark test. First, an animal is given a mirror and time to get familiar with it. Then, while it is asleep or distracted, researchers place a small dab of odorless, feel-free dye somewhere it cannot normally see, like its own forehead or ear. The dye can only be discovered one way, in the reflection, and here is the whole test. When the animal sees the mark in the mirror, what does it do? If it reaches for the mirror or ignores the mark, it has failed. It thinks the reflection is another animal. But if it reaches up and touches the mark on its own body, it is understood that the reflection is itself. Gallup tried it first with chimpanzees, and they passed immediately, inspecting the hidden mark on their own faces, using the mirror as a tool. For the first time, science had a window into an animal knowing it had a self. And here is something that should stop you. You failed this exact test once. A human baby will reach behind the mirror or babble at the reflection like a playmate until it is around 18 months to 2 years old. Knowing your own face is not something you were born with. It is something that quietly switched on inside you. So the great race began, holding a mirror up to the animal kingdom to see who else was in there. And the club that passed turned out to be shockingly small and exclusive. Our closest cousins made it in. Chimpanzees, orangutans, and bonobos can all recognize themselves. Then came a creature from an entirely different world, the bottlenose dolphin. In 2001, researchers marked dolphins and watched them twist and spin in front of a mirror to inspect spots they could never otherwise see. Elephants joined the list in 2006, which is how Happy earned her place in history. And then, in 2008, the club welcomed a member that stunned everyone: a bird. The Eurasian magpie became the first non-mammal ever to pass, touching a colored sticker on its own throat using only its reflection. That was the map for decades. A tiny, brilliant elite. Great apes, dolphins, elephants, one clever bird. Self-recognition looked like a crown reserved for the biggest, most powerful brains on Earth, and then a fish walked in and knocked the crown right off. In 2019, a team of scientists tested a small reef fish called the cleaner Ross. It is a finger-length fish with a brain smaller than a grain of rice. They placed a colored mark on its body in a spot it could only see in a mirror, and the fish tried to scrape the mark off against a rock, again and again, but only after seeing it in its reflection. By every rule Gallup wrote in 1970, this tiny fish had just passed the same test as a chimpanzee. And it was not even alone in the deep. Giant manta rays, too, have been filmed circling their own reflections, checking themselves in ways that hint they know exactly who is staring back. The scientific world erupted. Skeptics fought back hard, refusing to believe a fish could hold a sense of self. So the original team ran the experiment again with more fish, and later even showed the Rosse could pick out its own face in a photograph and ignore the face of a stranger. The result held. Because this was impossible under the old story. A fish, with almost no brain to speak of, had done what dogs, cats, and nearly every monkey on Earth cannot. It left scientists with only two possibilities, and both are unsettling. Either self-awareness is far more common, and far older, than we ever dared to imagine, hiding in creatures we dismissed as simple. Or the mirror test itself is broken and never truly measured self-awareness at all. And the more you look at who fails, the more that second possibility starts to make sense. Because here is the strangest part. Plenty of animals that flunk the mark test can clearly use a mirror. Monkeys and dogs will happily follow a reflection to find a treat hidden behind their own heads. They understand exactly how the mirror works and exactly where the real world is. They just do not care about a strange colored dot on their fur. Failing the test, it turns out, can mean an animal understood everything and simply shrugged. Because your dog fails the mirror test, so does your cat. They glance at the glass, see nothing worth their time, and walk away. For a long time, that was taken as proof that a dog has no sense of self. But think about how a dog actually experiences the world. A dog does not live through its eyes. It lives through its nose. Its reality is built from smell, a sense so powerful it can detect a single drop of scent in an Olympic swimming pool. Where you see a room, a dog reads a rich, layered story written entirely in odor. To a dog, a silent, odorless reflection is one of the least interesting things imaginable. It smells like nothing, so it is nothing. Asking a dog to know itself in a mirror is like asking you to recognize your own reflection in complete darkness. So a scientist named Alexandra Horowitz asked a better question. What if you gave a dog a mirror it could actually understand? A mirror made of smell. She presented dogs with their own urine scent, and then the same scent secretly altered with a new odor. The dogs barely sniffed their own familiar smell, but the altered version, their scent, but changed? They investigated it intensely for far longer. They noticed something was different about their own signature, a sniff of self-recognition. And suddenly the whole picture flips. The dog was never failing to recognize itself. We were failing to ask the question in a language it speaks. The mirror test was never a pure measure of self-awareness. It was a measure of one thing: how much an animal happens to care about how it looks. Consider the gorilla, which usually fails the mirror test, even though its close cousins pass with ease. For a gorilla, staring directly into another face is a threat, an act of aggression. So a gorilla at a mirror does the polite thing. It looks away, and by looking away, it fails a test that was never built for a creature like it. We designed the mirror test in our own image, for a species obsessed with faces and vision. Then we handed it to the rest of the animal kingdom and quietly crowned the ones who played by our rules, the self-aware ones. So let us return, one last time, to Happy the elephant, trunk raised to the mark on her head. Was that the rare spark of a self, glowing in one of the few minds gifted enough to hold it? Or was she simply one of the handful of animals who share our particular obsession with the reflected face, while a fish, a dog, and 1,000 other creatures carry their own sense of self in ways we never thought to measure? The animal at the mirror may not be failing our test at all. We may just be failing to imagine all the other ways a mind can quietly know that it exists. By a scent on the wind, by a sound in the dark, by a self that never once needed to see its own face to be sure that it was there.